Welcome to Prompt Circle, where we discuss real-world use cases of AI. In today's video, we'll be building a Slack ChatGPT bot that can perform Zapier actions based on simple commands. Now, here's an example of what it should look like. All right, so for our showcase, we're just going to be doing something really simple. We're just going to instruct our bot to go ahead and schedule a call. We're going to ask it to invite a particular individual to the call and also to post the details of the call to Slack. So to do that, we're just going to paste that message in here. So I schedule a call on the 1st of May 2023 between 1 and 2 p.m. Invite Ugo, and I put the email so that it has an email invite. It has an attendee to invite to the email. The meeting is about building Slack chatbots. Send the details of the meeting to this particular individual. So let's go ahead and do that and see what happens. So now it should be processing behind the scenes, and very shortly we should see our meeting scheduled. As we can see here, we have a meeting scheduled, and you can see the meeting call with Ugo about building Slack chatbots on the correct date, and inviting the user as well. And also it has sent information that it has scheduled that call with Ugo. So essentially that's exactly how this works. Now we're going to look at how to actually build it. To build our app, here's what we're going to cover. We're going to start off by signing up for Zapier Natural Language Actions and configuring them. We're going to create a Slack application. Then we're going to create our bot, which will include a Langchain agent function, as well as an event handler for our message in Slack. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our Natural Language Actions API, because we'll be using the API key in our application. So to do this, we want to go into Zapier, and I'm going to drop the link in the description as well. So it's zapier.com/l/natural-language-actions. And on that particular page, you'll also see access to the API documentation if you want to check that out. If you want full access, you need to fill out this form to get full access. But if you want to just start off immediately, all you need to do is to go over here to try it out section, and it says developers can start here. So click on the start here, and that should give you access to your natural language access points. And here you can see I have a dev app here, and you can see my API key. So these API key is what you're going to be using inside our app. But first and foremost, before we actually talk about the API key, let's go ahead and manage our actions. Now, actions are going to be the tools that we give our bot so that when we ask questions or when we ask it to perform a task, it will look through the actions that we have configured and use the right action to perform the task as required. So here we're going to be doing a few things. Let me just remove this one. First and foremost, let's add a few actions. So to add an action, just go ahead and add an action here. We're going to be adding a calendar action. So let's go ahead and go to calendar and add a calendar action. So I'm just going to be adding a Google Calendar find event action. So this would find your event in Google Calendar. So we see Google Calendar right here. We add this one. So this would allow us to be able to search through a calendar. You can see that I already have my calendar connected, but if you haven't connected anything in Zapier, please go ahead and click on this connect new, and that will take you through the process of connecting your calendar. So if I, just as an example, if I did connect new, you would see that it takes me through this OAuth process, which would allow me to connect my application. So, and you can do this for any other application that you intend to connect. So let's go ahead and set things up. So here we're going to be using our prompt circle calendar. So you can see here info at prompt circle, and the search term we're going to say have AI guess, and this means that you're giving your bot the ability to guess how to search for events in your calendar. Once you're done doing the configuration, you can go ahead and click on enable action, and this action becomes available to your bot. So let's do a quick add event, and we're using our account and which calendar do we want to use? We want to use this specific calendar. And in terms of describing the event, we want to make sure that the AI is guessing, because that would be based on whatever we type in as a message here. So let's go ahead and enable this action. And there are more options. You can also add more options like attendees and things of that nature. So if you want to add that, you can do have AI guess. And the action name, as you can see here, is Google Calendar Quick Add Event. And you can go ahead and enable this particular action. So the other action that we want to add here is we want the ability to send a direct message in Slack, right? So we're going to choose our Slack application. Now, if you remember, you can always connect your Slack application here. And we're also going to be, specifying, to having the AI guess which username we're going to be sending this message to. And we have a message text here, which we have the AI guess. Wherever you have the have AI guess, that just simply means that you're allowing whatever the AI determines as the right message to go in there, or the right attribute to go in there. So let's go ahead and enable that action. I think this is cool. I think we have a Google Calendar add event, we have a find event, and we also do have the ability to send a direct message. All right, so let's add one more action here. So let's add an action that sends a message into a channel in Slack as well. So we're going to use our Slack account that's already connected. For the channel where it sends the message, let's just have the AI guess, and as well we're going to have the message text guess. And in terms of the bot name, I would like to use a specific value. So let's just call this our Zapier agent bot. And you can also have like a bot icon and things of that nature. So these are just basically stuff that you can enter to your message. But I think for now, let's just keep it easy and just use the defaults as they are. So again, we're going to go ahead and enable this action. And now we have all the actions we need. Let's now go ahead and create our Slack application. All right, so let's create our Slack application. So to do that, you go to api.slack.com/apps. Go ahead and create a new application from scratch. We're going to call this app a Slack ChatGPT Zapier app, and we're going to be launching it into our workspace here. So we're going to go ahead and create the app itself. Now we need to go to OAuth permissions, and under OAuth permissions we need to add some scopes for our app. Here we need a chat write scope. That's basically all we need. And once we do that, we want to also go ahead and install this to the workspace. So once we install it to the workspace, that will generate our Slack bot token. So remember to copy this and keep it safe, because we're going to be using this in the app itself. Next up, we want to go ahead and activate socket mode, because socket mode is what we're going to be using for this app. So we're going to go ahead and activate socket mode. We're going to use connections right, and we're going to give it a name here. So let's give it let's just call it an app token, and go ahead and generate it. Again, copy this and keep it safe, because we're going to be using that in our app as well. So now we have socket mode all installed. Now we want to go to event subscriptions and turn on our events, and we're going to be subscribing to a bot event that receives messages. All right, so we're going to subscribe to our app event that deals with messages, so message.im, and that is essentially the main event that we're going to be listening for. So we're going to go ahead and save this and then reinstall the app so that it takes effect. Next up, we want to go to our app home and make sure that our app is able to receive messages. So we want to go under the messages tab and say allow users to send / commands and messages from the messages tab. So that's it. So this is going to create our Slack application. So once you're done with this, now we should be ready to jump into the code and start writing our bot. All right, so let's set up our development environment. First, let's go into the terminal and set up a directory. So using the make directory command, create a Slack Zapier bot directory, and you can cd into that directory. Go ahead and activate a virtual environment, and then create a .env file in that directory and add the following tokens. That would be your Slack app token, your Slack bot token, your OpenAI API key, as well as your Zapier Natural Language Action API key. All right, so in terms of libraries to be installed, you will install your Slack bot library, your OpenAI library, the Langchain library, and then your Python .env library so that we can access your environment variables. Let's go ahead and create our file here. So I'm going to call it bot.py. And in here, I've already written out the entire code. So I'm just going to paste it in, and then we can step through it one after the other. So in terms of the libraries that we're using and the modules that we're using the OS module to access our environment variables. We're using the .env variable as well to access those environment variables. As usual with Slack, we're going to import the app class from the Slack bot module. We also want to get our socket mode module directly from the socket mode. We want to get our socket mode handler, from our socket mode bot app. And then also from the Langchain side of things, we want to import OpenAI because we're going to be using OpenAI as our large language model. We're going to be using our initialized agent because we're using the concept of agent. More on agent later. I would explain what agents are actually all about. And then we're going to be using our Zapier toolkit. So the Zapier toolkit essentially is where we are, how we connect Zapier to our natural language actions, connecting the agents to the natural language actions. And then we're importing both agent type and then a Zapier natural language action wrapper. So those are the specific modules that we're going to be needing. Then we want to load up our .env. So we're going to access our tokens from our .env file. Next up, we want to go ahead and initialize agent. So let's talk about agent a little bit first before we actually go ahead and look at the code itself. Agents provide an approach that uses the large language model itself as an autonomous entity that can make decisions depending on what query it receives. Now, it's not always easy to predetermine what questions someone might ask to your bot. So using agents allows the agent to do the reasoning and then determine exactly how it's going to respond or how it's going to solve the particular task it's been given. So in doing this, it needs tools, and these tools are basically how the agents interact with other resources. Tools include API calls, search capabilities, CRUD operations that you might be running. We also have the concept of toolkits, and this is what we're actually going to be using today. We're going to be using the Zapier Natural Language Actions Toolkit, which contains access to all 5,000 applications that are already available in Zapier, which means if you have a connected action in Zapier, like updating a spreadsheet or sending a Slack message, sending an email, or any of those actions, your agent will be able to run those actions depending on the query it does receive. Now let's talk about the function. Now this function basically takes in a number of parameters. Essentially it's the initialize agent function. It takes in tools, toolkit. It also takes in an agent type as well as an LLM. So we're defining that over here. So we're defining the large language model we're using. So in this case, we're using OpenAI and we're setting a temperature to 0. You can also add other parameters if you want. We just want to make sure it's set to 0 just to prevent hallucination. Then we are also getting our Zapier Natural Language Action Wrapper. So this is an API wrapper for the Zapier Natural Language Actions, which basically abstracts the need for you to, kind of understand each and every endpoint from that Zapier NLA API. Then we have a toolkit basically, and this toolkit is what we're pulling in from the Zapier Natural Language Action wrapper. So it pulls in all the actions that we have configured earlier on. So now to kind of get this started, we use the initialize agent action, which takes in a toolkit. And the toolkit basically is the Zapier toolkit that we defined earlier on. We pass in a large language model, which we've defined for OpenAI. And then there's an agent type. So this agent type basically is the way your agent is going to actually analyze and decide which actions to take. And the approach we're taking here is called the zero-shot React description. So React is a framework which is basically reason and act, or reasoning and act. And I'll put a link to a paper that goes in depth in describing exactly how this works. And you would see that when we run this particular function, you would notice that the way it actually processes things is by first and foremost defining or reasoning about what the issue or what the task is all about, and then determining what action to take afterwards. That you can see in the agent execution window once we start running our application. Verbose is also set to true, which means that it's going to be able to show the entire reasoning as it's going through. So we can see that in the console shortly. Now, next up, we're going to just initialize our Slack app. If you're familiar with my videos, you would notice that we just typically do this. So we just use a variable app, and when we pass in our app class, and then we pass in the Slack bot token to that app class. As always, very, very simple here. Just for our test, we're just simply doing handling a message, so that could be any message here, and we're basically creating a function that takes that message and responds to it. So very, very simple and basic, just for us to kind of test things out. There are other ways to do this. Like I say, you could use the chat post message or the chat post ephemeral message as well. And then finally, we get to start our app, and we're starting it in socket mode. So we're using the socket mode handler, and we're passing in the app as well as the app token, and then using the start method or the start function to get it started. So that's it. We're done. So now we can just go ahead and save this particular file, and then we can run our app. To run our app, we go Python 3 bot.py, and as we can see, Bolt app is running, which shows that our app seems to be working fine. So now let's go into Slack and see exactly how it performs. All right, so let's see exactly how our app is going to perform. So we're going to be sending it a message asking it to schedule a meeting, and we're going to provide an email of the person we're inviting to the meeting. We're providing some kind of description. So I'm just going to read out the message we're sending. Schedule a meeting between me and Ugo. His email is ugo@palmcircle.com. In the description, highlight that we would want to discuss his recent inquiry about buying our software. Get the details of the meeting and send to the Slack. Send to, let me just say, send to myself. Now, I want to do something here. So schedule a meeting at 1 p.m. Let's say a meeting between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. on the 2nd of May 2023. Okay, so I think so that we're just really specific. Very important when dealing with these things that you are as specific as possible. So schedule a meeting between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. on the 2nd of May 2023 between me and Ugo. His email is this. In the description, highlight that we want to discuss his recent inquiry about buying software. Get the details of the meeting and send to this particular individual. So let's go ahead and do that and see what happens. Now, to see exactly what's going on behind the scenes, you can just open up your terminal to see exactly what's happening. So first, it says I need to create an event in Google Calendar and then send the details to Ugo. Then it says the action I need to do this is the quick add event. it says create an event between 1 p.m. and then with Ugo, and the description, discuss Ugo's recent inquiry about buying our software. And it has an observation, which is basically the payload is going to be interacting with. This is what it's sending over to, what it's going to be sending over to Zapier's Natural Language Actions. And then it's saying, I need to send the details of the meeting to Ugo. And then it realizes that to do that, it needs to use Slack to do that, and it needs to use a send direct action. And as you can remember, when we're doing all of this, we used we added actions for sending direct messages. We added actions for sending messages to channel. But because I had indicated specifically who to send the message to, it is actually able to detect that this is the action that is needed. So it says send a direct message to this individual with a text, the meeting has been scheduled, and then it's also pulling in the event details, which is pretty remarkable here. So then it's able to kind of realize this is what it needs to do. So it's now calling the Slack API essentially, or the Slack action from Zapier essentially, and then it now knows what to do to send that information over. So let's go and see what has happened here, because this is pretty special, right? So first and foremost, it schedules the call, right? So we see discuss Ugo's recent inquiry about buying our software. It also invites Ugo, as we indicated, and then it sends a message saying the meeting has been scheduled for 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. on the 2nd of May 2023. Description is this. And then it also gives us the link to the event calendar as well. So when we click on this, this is taking us directly to this particular meeting. And just imagine what you can do with this with other types of actions. So virtually whatever you can think about that is possible on Zapier can now be something that you interact with through natural language. And that is really where the power of this tool lies. I am looking forward to seeing what you guys build. Until next time, talk to you and have a great one.